What?
Take care of something on the phone.
Okay, fine.
The computer is straightforward.
So we shall start on page 191. At the end of the line that begins with the word oir. That's seven lines from the top of Ois Yud. And what the Rebbe is explaining here is that even though the main power of the Nefesh Olikis to conquer and overcome the Nefesh Abamis and to illuminate the midas of Nefesh Abamis, and that the Nefesh Olikis should be able to free itself from the grasp of the Nefesh Abamis is through midas, through Abba Paltiel. Seichel alone doesn't do it. On the other hand, this is the important thing that he's explaining here, that the midas themselves get their ability from the Seichel, from the Oira Seichel. Because the midas have come from Seichel, this is how they have the power to illuminate and to overcome. Because the oir, the light, meaning the sense of truth and reality, comes from Seichel. Thank you. Comes from Seichel. And the Seichel has to be translated into Midas. But the oil itself comes from Seichel, as we discussed over the last few times, that Midas without Seichel are not significant. It's like there's no truth and universality in it. Understand what I mean?
You say it's not human?
It doesn't have the human, the special human quality. It is like saying, I prefer this. When they say, I prefer this, so come to Nefesh Abamis and says, I prefer this. Why are you privileged over me? There is no oil, there's nothing that illuminates, that says, no, but this is the right thing, this is the truth. There isn't that. That quality comes from the Seichel.
Can I ask you a question about what we learned last time?
Yes, sure.
We said that from the Meikin it goes to the Midesh of Seichel. So that the Midesh of Seichel is what allows us to connect to that concept which we've developed from the Meikin. In the Meikin, the Seichel is completely objective. And therefore, without the Midesh of Seichel, so then it might be very true, but what does it negate to me? Why would I feel any connection to this Indian? Is that the idea of the Midesh of Seichel?
Yes, except this which you say, negate to me is already Midas. This is like Seichel Shel Midas and Midas. This is, in the Seichel itself, there is a sense, like we explained, there is a sense that this is significant. Not to me.
But there is a significance.
There is a significance. And the best way that I found in terms of verbiage, how to describe it, Seichel says this is the truth. Midas says this is good. You see the difference? Good implies, going forward. What do you do with it? Truth can stay on its own. This is for that Seichel, pure Seichel, doesn't go anyplace.
And so Midesh of Seichel means not only is it true, but it's significant. The truth is, the fact that it's true means it has a value.
No, this truth has a significance.
So is it also that seichel on itself is subjective, and all it's able to realize is truth. So then, is it correct to say that the midah of a seichel not only means that things, not only adds the idea that this truth is significant, but also that there is, meaning, without the midah of a seichel, any truth which you would discover in the world would seem completely, totally isolated unto itself, because there's nothing to connect it to anything else, because it's just a truth. So, meaning without the midah of a seichel, the world would seem just very fragmented. You would not be able to put together concepts. Nothing seemingly would have any connection to anything else, because you have just a bunch of random independent truths, but nothing which connect them together, because there's no significance which would bind them together.
It would seem that way, but in the seichel that you're talking about is not seichel at all. We spoke about this many times. When you identify facts, that's not seichel. That's identifying facts. Seichel we're talking about when the whole fact of it, the whole reality of it is because seichel conceptualizes it. It's a seichelic truth. It's not a factual, physical truth. So a seichelic truth can be all-encompassing. Even if you understand in your seichel clearly that the whole mitzias of the world is godliness, even that will not necessarily translate in any action directly. You could say that since it's all godliness, therefore you should act thusly. But this therefore is disconnected. It's only that you're going and you're taking this seichel and you're saying, therefore I should do like this. This therefore is not part of that seichel. That's a separate seichel.
That therefore would be the midah of a seichel?
That therefore is when there is an absence of midah shebaseichel, there comes a therefore. In other words, when you're forcing the issue, the real pathway is you don't need to therefore. The midah shebaseichel in itself gives you the life force to continue on with it. This is called the chassidus a bechein. When the seichel is not deep enough to touch the soul, and it remains only in seichel, so then in order to utilize the seichel in real life, you have to go to a bechein, what's called a bechein. Therefore, since this is such and such, therefore I have to do this. Let us say, give you an illustration so you'd have this is a very clear point. This is my son. Therefore, I should take care of him. Sound right? Does that sound right? It's true, but it doesn't sound right. Why? Because if this is my son, wow, I'm taking care of him. There's no therefore.
Therefore, then doesn't it kind of shed light on the initial point? So then it's not really seichel, because then it just seems like he doesn't really understand the truth of the matter of the relationship between a father and son. He's collected the facts that since that I was responsible for the birth of the child, so he is my son. So it seems like it's not the real seichel like we talk about in the real sense. Well,
this is what I said before. It is seichel, but it is still the superficial part of seichel. It's not a seichel that really touched your depth of seichel. If this seichel had touched the essence of the seichel, then there would be this gap wouldn't exist. Perhaps we should take another a little more time and try to understand Midas and Seichel are two different entities, very different natures. Why is there Midas Sheba Seichel? And why is there Seichel Sheba Midas? That's what we said, this is the interconnection. Why is it imperative that in Seichel there is also Midas Sheba Seichel?
Without the intermediaries, it would be impossible to bridge the gap.
Right. That is true. But the question is, where is it coming from? So we're saying it does bridge the gap. Well, how come? How come we say for sure in the real Seichel there is Midas Sheba Seichel, and in real Midas there is Seichel Sheba Midas? This is, yes, it's Ilo v'Yolo. And the Ilo v'Olo actually has this interrelationship that in the Ilo there is an aspect of the Olo, and this is how it comes out. My question is, since that Seichel and Midas are very different natures, where does the Seichel get this Midah? How come there's Midah in the Seichel? The Seichel is involved in the Seichel. And the Seichel wants to understand the Inyan in its purity. How come we say that inevitably there's going to be a Midah in the Seichel? Particularly, the interesting thing is, the deeper you go in the Seichel, then it's guaranteed that there's going to be Midah in the Seichel. And the Seichel is more superficial, then it's not going to have the Midah Seichel. It should be the opposite, I would think. The deeper the Seichel, the more pure the Seichel is. And not involved with Midas.
You said because both the Midas and the Seichel have a common makar in the Etzem and the Shama, and the entire point of these faculties is only to bring the person to Maisa B'Poel. So therefore it's a result of the purpose. It's not just coincidental that the Neshama has this makeup. It has this makeup for a purpose.
Well, let me explain to you how it is, and you will yourself see the difference and the contrast. Just to respond to your point, the makeup of the neshama is not an artificial makeup.
Makeup?
Consistency, what it's made from, what it has. The makeup of the neshama is reflecting the truth of the neshama. It's not an artificial thing. But yes, you touched upon an important point. The reason that we have seichel, this is an important thing to understand, which we always emphasizing. If you recall, and try to illustrate what seichel is, and we said, let's say seichel, plain seichel anushi, human common sense. They say the common sense says that you're supposed to eat with a spoon and a fork and not put your face into the plate. This is what seichel said. This is how seichel directs it. This is what you're supposed to eat. Why is that the right thing? Behind that is because you're a human being. Seichel emanates from something truer than seichel, something more fundamental than seichel. It's not the logic that creates this idea. It is the truth of it, the fact that you're a human being, you're supposed to eat in a certain way. Seichel then goes and identifies what that way should be. But on what basis that is identified? On the basis that seichel emanates from the quality what a human being is.
So even though that it's logical, it's safer that a person should eat with a spoon and a fork, but it's complete. I mean, when you want to say how should a person eat, so Seichel will tell you, let him pick up a spoon and a fork, but what's the reason is completely illogical why that is preferable as a human being over putting your face in the food.
Right.
It doesn't have a mocker in the Seichel.
It's not the mocker of the seichel is the essence. It's not based on logic. If somebody says the reason you're supposed to eat like this is because it keeps your shirt clean, you say you missed the point. You don't really understand. There is something much more significant, more true to this seichel. So being that it is rooted in this essence, that this is a human being, therefore the seichel itself carries, it's rooted in something richer than seichel. Understand what I'm saying? And therefore this seichel has in it the ingredients for midah shebaseichel. That it's not just right, but this is actually expressing something richer than seichel, expressing a human quality, which is the midah shebaseichel. When we take this seichel, this whole process coming from the essence of a human being to the action, this is all different steps. And the steps are seichel, midas, machshava, dibur, ma'aseh. What all these steps cumulatively represent a human being. Where in essence, it is all contained in that essence. Therefore, each madrega has some of the quality of the next madrega. Why? Because the whole seichel comes not from seichel, it comes from something greater than seichel. Do you follow me? The seichel itself comes from something more true than seichel.
And that's a miscale everything.
That's a miscale of everything.
So therefore, even in the seichel, a little bit of the midas is there.
Oh, that's it.
And can you say something even in the Ratzain, there's a little bit of the seichel and in the midas?
No, Ratzin is supreme. Ratzin has everything in itself.
And what about Einig? Einig we said is above.
Einig is above Ratzin. That's
different.
That's a different world. Different world.
So when we talk about seichel midas and the Levusha and Nefesh, so we say that even in Machshava you have a little bit of seichel and midas.
No, Machshava, these are levushim. They can be a levush to seichel, a levush to midas. These are levushim. Okay, let's not go that far. So you understand? So this is why the seichel has midah shebaseichel, because it's a living seichel. It's not seichel based on seichel. It's seichel based on nefesh. This is why in the seichel there is midah shebaseichel, and this is why we say when is there this in midah shebaseichel, when the seichel goes deep enough and it touches the nefesh. That's when the whole richness of that seichel comes along, and there is a midah shebaseichel. If the seichel is only superficial, then it's only aware of the seichel. It's not even aware of the full richness where it's coming from. And therefore, then it's not conscious of the midah shebaseichel. And then he comes back and says, well, therefore, this is my son. Therefore, and it loses the whole point. Okay, you understand that? And this is why the midas also have seichel. Seichel should be midas, because in the total picture, it is the nefesh that's mechaya the whole structure. There's a nefesh quality throughout the entire process. It's not just seichel, it's not just midas, it's not just machshava. This is the important thing. then we distinguish, you say seichel is objective. I always make a point to explain, to make a point that the objectivity of seichel, what we refer to objectivity of seichel, we don't mean the objectivity of dry and cold and dead seichel. Seichel where we completely eliminate the human being. That's not seichel. The objectivity of seichel is that the seichel touches the truth. And the human being has been granted that insight, that ability to touch the truth. But he's a human being. And the reason he's able to touch the truth is because he is true. Because he's a true nefesh. He is related to the truth. This is why he's able to touch the truth. The nefesh ha'odam is not the same as the nefesh ha'bheima. The behemoth does not have seichel because it's a different nefesh. The reason that the human being has seichel is not because he has a different brain, but because he has a different nefesh. Okay.
If you go with seichel deep enough, like you touch the soul, how it's affect on the midas, why it's reveal the midas? Like,
When the seichel is really deep in essential seichel, the midas flow automatically. Because this seichel is actually revealing what the nefesh is. Like if you have sun coming through the window, when you have sun coming through the window, you see the sunshine, the sunlight. But then you don't only see the sunlight. Then you see everything else in the room. Automatically. Then the whole room becomes lit up. And you're able to read what's in this book. Not two separate steps. Because you have the sunlight itself. The window is pure, allows the sunlight to come in, and the sunlight illuminates the whole room. This is when you have pure seichel.
so if you take some idea, first of all you don't understand so much, but you think, you go deep, and you understand with seichel, it's like it's you, it's true, it's connected to you. So then it's like midas, it's for me, it's like this idea is fit for me, so the midas real that.
Then the midas, it's called midas the gadlus. Then the midas are on par. On par means on the same level as the seichel. Because the midas also are reflecting the truth of the nefesh. The midas are not because it's my preference, but because it is completely true. Completely right. That's a very high madrega, but yes, there is such a thing.
How you know you get to this point of touch, like to the soul, when you don't have a question on this, like it's like absolute, you understand it's absolute truth. For you don't have doubts.
There is more to that than what you described. You can come to a point in seichel where you don't have a doubt, but you yourself are still away from it. Like the Alter Rebbe says, you can say Shema Yisrael with closed eyes, and you have no doubt. You open your eyes, and all of a sudden you see a different truth. You yourself have not yet been purified to be able to accept the seichel. You understand? We have no doubt. When we are into the seichel, we have no doubt. With closed eyes, there's a lot of truth that we see. But that it should be you have to see it with open eyes. And open eyes, you see a completely different world. That's part of avodah. And this avodah requires avodah from seichel and midas, orderly way. Because essentially, what are you affected by when you see the world? Not your seichel, you're affected by the midas. So you have to elevate your midas first in order to be able to face the world. You understand? There are no shortcuts. Okay, let's go on. Okay. Okay, so we're 7 lines from the beginning of the Ois Yud on page 191. The line has the word Oir, and the very last word on that line, the Zehu Yoim Melois. This is the implication in the word Yoim Melois. This is a direct quote from the Pasuk, Yoim Melois. And we explained Yoim is light, Yoim refers to Seichel, and Melois is in the filling in of Midas. The Midas Shebeseichel, because Midas within this, and the Midas that are part of Seichel, Hein Gamkein Midas. They are also Midas. In other words, there is a certain commonality, a certain similarity between Midas Shebeseichel and the Midas outside of the Seichel. What is the commonality? The inyanom, that the inyan, the nature and the function of these Midas is inyan hagilui v'hahispoilus, is the principle of revelation and hispoilus being affected.
Yebulois refers to the midas when they're properly affected by seichel, right?
Yoim Elois is the midas shebeseichel, because Yoim is seichel, but it's a day that functions to Melois, to create the midas.
We said in the previous line, we said you have the chaining down of making to midas shebeseichel, and from there to seichel to midas, and then to midas gluy shebelev. But zaykin yahamidas heid megudaris umtkanes umolis kayach and Abba Paltiel v'nigra yemuloyim, and those midas are called
Yemiluyim. Okay. Okay. Let's go through these lines and we'll everything. So he says Yom Elois in the Pshat, because midas shebeseichel and gamkin midas. They're also midas in yonam inyan hagilui v'hispoilus. What is the inyan midas? Gilui v'hispoilus. Like we always say, what is midas in contrast to seichel? Seichel is objective, midas are subjective. What does that mean? Seichel is when you look at the inyan, where the inyan, the place where the inyan is. It doesn't affect you. It's not your thing. It's what the truth of the inyan is. Midas is how it affects me. That means what is the effect of that thing? This is the gilui and hispoilus. How does that thing affect outside of itself? That's the inyan midas. The midas shebeseichel have also this quality. They're midas, meaning that inyanim is the gilui hispoilus. Seichel by itself is not hispoilus. Doesn't affect anything. Just look at it.
It's only gilui.
Gilui, huh?
Seichel is only gilui.
It's not even anything gilui. Gilui, the word gilui means to represent, to reveal. Seichel is not to reveal, but to reveal, the word to reveal means to reveal outside of the source. Seichel is not interested to reveal outside of it. Seichel is interested to go to the source itself. Not to reveal outside of the source. But there is Midas Shebeseichel, whose nature, whose objective is to reveal outside, take the scene outside of the source. And therefore it reveals the inyan outside, and therefore it affects. It has an effect on the person who has that gilui.
So seichel, midrash in the seichel is not feeling. It's like a concept to connect this to yourself. You're actually not feeling anything, but through this you came to the midrash.
That's correct. It's still in the mind. It's not in the heart. But in the mind, it is a personal thing. You understand? And therefore it is affecting, but it's a feeling in the mind rather than feeling in the heart. Since it's a personal thing, then we call it already a feeling. But it's a mind feeling rather than a heart feeling. A mind feeling is very different than that of the heart. The mind feeling is, since the mind, the seichel, is drawn to the source, a mind feeling is, I want to be part of that source, part of that inyan. I want to experience it. But I want to experience it. It's not enough that I see it, but I want to be part of it. That's his purpose. B'chalukes midas shebalev b'shnei inyonim. Midas shebeseichel are also midas, and the nature, the function of midas, the inyan of midas is gilui explains, but they're different from midas shebalev b'shnei inyonim in 2 points. Aleph, one, b'mehusam. In the Mahusam means in their essence. What type of presence is it? When you touch the midah, what are you touching in Mahusam? We'll explain in a minute. And the Mahusam, the midah says, Shehein shayoches al ha-seichel, they belong to the seichel, ve'einon mahus le'atzmon, k'mei ha-midah shebalev. They're not a presence of their own for themselves, like the midas in the heart. Shehein mahus la'atzmon mimhus haseichel. The midas in the heart are a presence, an independent, a separate presence for themselves. La'atzmon. Separate from the seichel. Whereas the midas shebeseichel are not a separate mahus from the seichel. They belong to the seichel. They're part of the seichel itself. And this is one thing that distinguishes these midas from midas shebalev. Midas shebalev become independent. It's like if you touch something hot. So when you're touching it, you're aware that this thing is hot. When you take your finger away, then you're not touching it anymore. What do you have? You have the burn. You got burned from it. That burn is there. Not only when you touch it, when you separate from it. Midas shebeseichel is when you're touching the seichel.
Sensation of heat from the object itself.
From the object itself.
Meaning if your seichel were to change, then the midas shebelev they will stay the same. They won't be affected.
No. The midas shebelev continue to get their life force from the seichel, and the seichel changes, then the midas dissipate. But while by the seichel exists, they exist as a separate entity. Again, take the example of light. When you see the table, you see because the light shines on it. Do you see a table or light? A table. But the minute you take the light away, there's no table. You no longer see the table either. Not only then you don't see the light, you don't see the table either. Seichel is the light. Seichel is that which gives, like we speak all the time, Seichel is that which gives a person a sense of something existing, of reality. Just like sight. Right? You touch the table and the table is real, but the real reason why it's real is because you see it. But if you don't see it, then even what you touch is not real. Right? It's an interesting thing. The halacha says that Shabbos you're supposed to have candles on the table. Why you have to have Shabbos lights? Do you know why you have to Shabbos? What's the takon? It is essential, the halacha, so to speak, takon of Shabbos
Not
lights.
stuck in the dark or something.
What?
Not stuck in the dark when you go in, then it's dark, so you can fall or something.
You can fall, and more importantly is that when you eat, you should enjoy your food. When you eat and you don't see your food, you can't enjoy your food.
Same thing with smoking with your eyes closed. There's nothing there.
Nothing there.
Completely devoid
Okay,
of any sensation.
let's talk about the real things. So even though it's real food, it's the same taste. What do you feel in food? The taste. But if you don't see where the taste is coming from, you don't enjoy it. It's an interesting thing. Because it has to be real. Seichel is what makes it real. And this is why you asked, it becomes a media. I really feel it. So why do you need seichel? You take the seichel away, it loses its value. Like I said before, there is midas shebeseichel, there's seichel shebemidas, and because there is seichel shebemidas, therefore there is midas. Take away the seichel, there is no midas. There's a human nature. Not such a commendable nature, but there is a human nature. I got angry at him. And then I forgot my anger. I wished I could get angry again. Why did you forget the anger? Well, the whole seichel, why I got angry, I lost it. But I want to be angry at him. So I'm trying to arouse the anger. But I'm not angry. Because I lost the seichel. I lost the initial force behind it. And the whole midah falls, it dissipates.
So then what does it mean that midas shebeseichel are different from midas by itself? Midas shebelev.
Right. Okay, so that's important to understand. Dependency is not the same as quality, as presence. Something can depend on something else, but it's a separate entity. Like I said before to you, sunlight, and you have light, and you see the table. To see the table depends on the light, but the table is not light. It's a separate mitzvah.
Whereas the midday seichel are the same mitzias as the seichel.
Are the seichel, right? The mahus of the midah is the seichel itself. It's the lower part of the seichel.
What about in the Moshe you just gave about a person he wants to hold a grudge but he forgot why he's angry. Sometimes he remembers why it is that he originally didn't like the person, and yet for some reason he can no longer. He's like, I remember why, and it's seemingly I'm correct not to like this person, but for some reason I just don't feel angry with him. Could you say that that's because the midah of the seichel are now gone? Meaning the seichel's still there, but the midah.
No. This seichel is gone. And that's this reminds us of what we talked before. Seichel is not a standalone entity. Seichel is when it touches you, touches your nefesh. It no longer touches you. So the seichel is just an external logic. This is real objective. This is seichel without chayes. This is what's called objectivity in the world, which is lifeless seichel. We don't talk about that. Vehabeis, and the other thing. Hi, you know where we're up to? You want to join us? You know where we're up to? We are in the middle of Ois Yud, on that page in 191. The line starts with the word K'mei HaMidos. Vehabeis, and the other thing which that distinguishes, that the difference, that the midas b'seichel are different than midas, b'piyolosim, in their effect, in their function. Both midas have an effect, but there's a difference. The midas shebelev piyolosim b'dibur u'maisa, the effect, the action that midas on the heart create is in dibur u'maisa. Midas of the heart force out dibur, speech, and it forces a person to speak about his midah, and maisa in action. Midas b'seichel, and the midas that are part of the seichel, hine piyuloson, is their effect is lemalos as hamidah shebelev.
Why does it exclude machshava here?
One second. Piyuloson is lemalos as hamidah shebelev. It is to fill and to create the midah shebelev. I'll come back to your question. So, this, first we have to understand the difference. It's not just a difference, where they are. It's a qualitative difference. Midas shebelev, as expressed and affecting their effect is in dibur and in mais. Midas shebeseichel, their effect is in midas shebelev. So this is there is a fundamental difference between these two. Dibur and Maisa speech and action are completely outside of the person, completely external actions. Certainly Matza, but Dibur also. When a person speaks, that means he speaks with someone else. It's an external thing. How does one come to act externally? If I think of something and I feel something, so it's only internal, it's in me. Why would that feeling express itself in an external action? If it is me, it is my nefesh, my seichel. So it should stay internal to myself. Do you see what I'm asking? What makes it that it forces itself to go outside? The midah shebelev force the external action. This is what he says here, that midah shebelev become an mitzias unto themselves. And because they become mitzias unto themselves, they therefore engage the outside. Midah shebeseichel are not a separate mitzvah; they're part of the seichel. And seichel knows only of the nefesh, knows only of the truth, where it's coming from. Seichel relates only where it's. Why do I understand it? In other words, why is this true? Why do I see it? That's seichel. Therefore, it's seichel. It stays connected to the source. Midas tends to become a separate mitzvah. They disconnect from the source, and this is why they can act externally. Do I have you with me a little bit? Let's see there.
And why do they disconnect exactly? Even if they're correct meters. They're correct meters, they're not disconnected.
Yes, they are disconnected. They're not disconnected in terms of what gives them sustenance, but the sense of it is disconnected. Like I said before with the light, right? The light shines, and it shines on the table, and therefore I see a table. And what happens as a result of the fact that I see a table? I completely disregard that I see that the light is what makes me see the table. Now I see the table. And now it's a question of, what do I do with the table? Not what do I do light. What do I do with the table? Even though it's only the light that made me see the table. But because the light has now transformed itself to something completely lower in itself, completely physical, my question becomes, what do I do with the table? And this is where the action comes in. This is what the midas are. Midas, even though they come from the seichel, they come from the light. But it is when the light becomes a mitzias. And therefore the question becomes, what do I do with this midah? I have a midah of chesed. So I have a midah of chesed. Is it enough that I have the midah? No, it's a mitzias. What do I do with it? What kind of action should result from it? This is because the midah becomes a mitzias on itself, on its own. As long as the midah is part of the seichel, it stays where it is. It's connected to the seichel, connected to the source.
But the midah as its own mitzvah is an aspect of personal relation.
I'm sorry?
You said the midah as a mitzvah to itself is an aspect of personal relation, that I personally relate to this midah, that this thing is no longer removed, but it's now become a real existence. It's real by me, and therefore it's negate to me. I relate to it. But if you have the question a second ago, if it's a matter of personal relation, why does it compel that the person should want to do something exterior from himself now?
Right. So I'm explaining. Okay. Because it becomes an exterior part within him. Let's understand it on the lower level. The Gemara says that there was Anshe Mechuzah, the Gemara said. The people in Mechuzah, they were very strong people. They were very simple and lowly. They were muscular people. The whole thing was their muscle. And if they had a day without work, they suffered. Work to them was a positive. Normally, if you hire workers and you didn't have work for them, so the halacha is, if you hired workers and you didn't have work for him, you have to pay them. You have to pay them because you wasted their time, but you have to pay them like you would pay a worker who didn't have to work. Not having to work is an asset. A person would rather not have to work and get paid than work and get paid. So therefore, you have to pay him. You have to pay him like you would pay somebody who was spared the work. But Anshe Mechuzah, then not to work, you have to pay them for not working, because they suffer from not working. In other words, if a person has a koyach, in his seichel, in his thought, okay, that it's not compelling him to work. But a person has a koyach in his muscle, he has to use it, and if he doesn't use it, he's suffering. It has to express itself in actual work. This is what Amida. Amida is already an external agitation, external energy. And it expresses itself externally because it comes with teeth and its own. It's an energizer. It's like an external energy that's contained in a person, but expresses itself has to go outside. Seichel is still contained internally, and the midas of the seichel are still internal. Okay, so this is why midas have to. What is the effect of midas? The effect of midas is to act externally, to speak about it, and to go into mice. And if you contain the midas and you hold it back, I suffer. I cannot express my feeling. Midas shebeseichel also want to express themselves, but their expression is into midas. That I should get the feeling, and this is the difference between midas shebeseichel and midas in the heart.
And therefore here it doesn't mention machshava because it's not the proper outlet for the expression of midas.
That's right.
Too internal for them.
That's right.
You felt pent up.
That's right.
You have to scream. You can't just hold it.
That's right. It's not outside.
When a person holds
Like I told you, I must have told you this. Somebody says, somebody knocks on the door and there's the pauper standing there in tattered clothes, clearly hungry, and he says, "Look at this man, what a mercy, what a pity." So he says, "Okay, so give him some food. If I give him food, it's not going to be a pity anymore." So pity, mercy, does not stop at mercy. It compels you to go and alleviate the pain, do something. It's not an internal thing. It expresses itself outside.
You see, when a person has like a midah that he's upset and he doesn't express it through thought or speech, he just keeps it in the machshav and he kind of mulls over it over and over again, so it agitates it. It ends up becoming much worse than it was if you were to just to go out and say it.
That's right. Well, right. It compels him to go and do something with it. Midah shebalev. And this is the pshat. I always point out the difference between the heart and the mind. The mind is bottled to the nefesh. It's not a mitzias. The heart is when it becomes a mitzias. I feel this. I don't even need to justify it. This is the way I feel. Therefore, it has to come out in an action. Okay, so he touches the pasuk over here. Zehu yoim melois. Yoim melois means day, which is light. Melois, whose function is to fill. Giluyim dinyonim lamalis. Yoim is giluyim, that which reveals itself, expresses itself, and the function of this giluyim is lamalis. Is to fill, like we said, there's a seichel whose function is to fill the midas. Ve'asmi heim memalim, and whom are they filling? These lights. Al zehu oimer, for this it says, Yimei milu eichem. The days milu eichem. These are two separate parts in the same pasuk. The pasuk says, Ad yoim melois imei milu eichem. Yoim melois imei milu eichem. So there are two different things. Yoim melois is there's midas shebeseichel, and imei milu eichem. These are the midas themselves. Imei milu eichem. Shehiyu hayomim shehem hamidas. That the yomim, which are the midas, should be meleyois me'oir hamoichin, should be filled with the light of the moich. You know that the 7 days of creation, or the 6 days of creation, are all these yomim are referring to these days refers to midas. That's why there's 6 days or 7 days, 7 midas. But then there is a higher yoim melois. There is a yoim which is the midas shebeseichel. This is the days. This is when the midas come from how the midas come from the seichel. It's called yoim melois imei milu eich. Like that. Shehu yoim hashmini. Shehu yoim hashmini di imei milu eich hamiluim, which is the 8th day of the miluim. The hainu oir hamoichin, which is the oir hamoichin hamemale as shivas hayomim shein hamidas. The oir hamoichin that fills the 7 days of the midas.
It's like opposite for why is moichin after the midas? Midas come from the moichin.
That is correct. Midas come from the moichin. And the 8th day is when we didn't have this before. The 8th day is when you go beyond the midas. There are 2 different levels of the gili of the moichin in the midas. There is the gili of the moichin, how they create the midas, individual midas. until the midas are completely imbued with the Oir HaSeichel, until you go and have the Oir HaSeichel itself revealed in the heart. This is similar to what we spoke about before, that there is how the Seichel illuminates the midas, and then when you go to the essence of the Seichel, where the midas become Seichel themselves. When the midas themselves are elevated and become like on the level of Seichel. Midas the godless, when we said before. So we'll have a little bit over here, a little piece of Kabbalah Oisios. But soon after that, we'll get back into, we get the Kabbalah Oisios, we kind of, we'll swim through it, and then we'll go back into tasty food. All right, so it's amazing how a chassan, the day before his wedding, can sit so calmly and listen and feign concentration.
Yeah, right. That's better.
Make believe, right?
It's also a lot of work, I imagine.
What?
It's also a lot of work.
I don't
Number 10.
think I'd be so successful as that.
That's Mayach Shalat HaLev.
Not really today.
All right, then a good show.